Hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the Black Belt Academy of Surgical Skills. My name is David Regan. I'm a professor in the Medical Education Research and Development Unit in the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Malaya. I'm a retired cardiac surgeon, and I am also third dan in karate, and I'm studying the sword here at the Japan Club in Kuala Lumpur. We're coming to you live from Kuala Lumpur. It is 9 o'clock in the evening, and we are supported by Ishi, who is in New Delhi as part of the iEcho team. And it's thank you to the iEcho team that we have had 27 sessions to date, 420 participants in 20 countries, including Malaysia, Cambodia, UK, India, Myanmar, Egypt, Nigeria, Brunei, Sudan, Ethiopia, Guatemala, Greece, Yemen, Belgium, Libya, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Afghanistan, China, and Algeria. Thank you. And if this is useful to you, please pass the link on and to your friends and encourage them to participate. And all the videos are available on our YouTube channel for catch-up for you to look at later. These sessions are brought to you live deliberately to maintain that spontaneity, but also to demonstrate that sometimes things don't go according to plan, just like surgery. I often think many of the basic surgical skills videos that are offered are too manicured, edited, and rather sterile. Hence the difference. Well, what have we got to report today for the Black Belt Academy? Our poster on the banana scoring has been accepted for the International Surgical Week in Mexico 2026. We also have it as preprint in ResearchGate, and I hope very shortly an online version will enable you to score your own bananas and receive a score. We will endeavor to check that scoring amongst the authors of our paper. I'm also delighted that on the 29th of November in the Clinical Skills Unit in the Faculty of Medicine, we will be having our first face-to-face Black Belt Academy. This is a significant step, and we've got excellent instruments to enable you to feel the tissues, and participation includes the instruments and all the tuition and courses and grading with certificates and CPT boards, we hope, until you reach Green Belt. I'm also delighted to inform you that the Black Belt Academy of Surgical Skills has been invited to advise the Royal Veterinary College, and we'll be running a course with them. Because stitching and suture skills applies across many disciplines: dentistry, veterinary, and of course, surgery and medicine. Last week, we talked about mind and movement, and I pointed out that it's important that we stand properly and we think properly. This evening, we're going to look particularly at the needle and dispel some of those pick it up 1/3, 2/3, and reinforce the principles of the pickup and use of the needle by understanding the anatomy of the needle, without which you're not going to use the needle effectively. I talked about the point, the pickup, and the pirouette. And the pirouette, at its core, is a classical ballet term that denotes a whirl or a spin performed on one leg while the other leg is raised off the ground. And it embodies balance, precision, control, and is an essential skill for any ballet dancer. The first step towards this lies in the dancer's preparation. Proper positioning is central. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? And the supporting leg should be firmly grounded while the body remains aligned and centered. Posture is important. Stability forms the foundation on which the pirouette is built, not unlike much of the moves in katas and martial arts. And dancers begin often by engaging their core muscles to create a space. And I'm finding this with the first 4 katas in Iaido, having to raise from a seite position off the floor straight up as if you're being pulled up. Maintaining balance throughout, which is crucial for a pirouette in ballet. Now, arms play a crucial role in ballet with a pirouette because they generate momentum and work in harmony with the legs to facilitate that rotation. By focusing on these elemental parts, the dancers themselves set them up for success as they transition to the actual turn. So once prepared, the dancer takes a leap of faith by pushing off the ground to initiate the spin. And as the dancer engages the core and utilizes the arm, that added propulsion happens. The true challenge emerges when the turn commences, because that requires spinning and immense concentration and skill. And the dancers do this by spotting, a technique that allows the dancer to maintain their equilibrium by fixing their gaze, zanshin or furushin, to a point in front of them to maintain their equilibrium and to prevent dizziness by fixing on the point. And as they turn, they quickly whip their heads round to focus on that point again, thus creating a seamless virtual continuity during the motion. This is a combination of physical strength, spatial awareness, mental acuity, breath control, and mindset. Sounds like surgery, doesn't it? And as the pirouette continues and concludes, the dancer prepares for the landing, which must be executed with the same precision and poise as the spin itself. You couldn't stop spinning and then stagger off the stage. A clean landing requires careful coordination as well of the limbs and the core to maintain balance. And the ability to return to a steady position is an indicator of the dancer's technical mastery. Successful landing and completion of the spin enhances the overall aesthetics of the performance. A graceful conclusion of a pirouette can evoke a sense of closure or completeness for the dancer as well as the enchanted audience. So the pirouette is much more than a spin. It represents the zenith of rigorous training, artistic expression, and extraordinary physical prowess. And this movement is captured the fascination of audiences throughout history in all classical ballet performance. And to understand this is not only to appreciate the technical aspects, but the emotional connection that dancers bring with the move. And the pirouette is used to punctuate performance, adding pathos or excitement. They've held prominent places throughout ballet's history, symbolizing not only technical mastery, but also the cultural ideals of grace and femininity. And it has undergone various transformations over time, reflecting the change in cultural aesthetics and values of different eras. Earlier forms were very simple, but served as the foundation of the more complex that evolved during the Romantic era. And dancers like Marie Taglioni and Fanny Esler took this to a new level of expertise and showcased the pirouette as a dynamic expression of both strength and femininity that has captivated audiences throughout history. And the emphasis on the spin and turn reflects broader societal themes of balance, poise, particularly in Western societies where the pirouette symbolizes delicate balance of strength and vulnerability. Almost enthusiasts say this reflects and is a mirror of cultural history. The reverence for the pirouette and ballet captures the enduring desire for elegance and refinement, echoing across generations. I like the description of the history of the pirouette because that elegance, balance, and finesse all are part of good survey. In the same way, a dancer performing a series of pirouettes in a dramatic scene, each spin symbolizes a fleeting moment of desire, escape, introspection. And it's all part of that artistic delivery that connects with the audience and establishes a bridge and a dialogue that transcends spoken language. And hence, storytelling evolves. But the implications for dance training and personal growth are profound. It's more than a spin. It represents the peak of training, artistic expression, and physical prowess. And this elegant movement has captured audiences forever. I'm going to show you what I believe is the pirouette of the surgical needle, which again requires practice, requires rigor, requires understanding of the needle, but in doing so results in a fluid, artistic, seamless movement of the needle within the operative field. And those watching will likewise be impressed. To master this requires discipline, practice, and resilience, not unlike dancers who confront many challenges along the way: physical limitations, mental blocks, external pressures. Sound familiar to surgical training, but each failure and each step is a stepping stone, propelling you forward to proceed. And that's why the models that we actually have in the Black Belt Academy are there deliberately to be difficult, to allow you to fail safely, but at the same time, get up, continue to practice and improve, encouraging that growth mindset. So without much ado, let us start thinking about the needle and what we do. As we know, if we take a straight needle and we take it into a cavity, very quickly you'll notice a limitation. You cannot maneuver a straight needle in a cup. However, when you take that needle and make it round, you now can maneuver it in the cup. But there are lots of elements to this that are important. The first thing is understanding the point. Now, the point actually makes up 1/3 of the needle. It is refined in a lot of different ways of cutting, tapered, blunt, but usually that refinement and machining occurs over 1/3 of the length. The point is literally there to enable you to enter the tissue. So I'd like you to consider this. If I'm holding a bit of cloth up and you note the warp and weft of the cloth, if I took a needle and came in at an angle, I'd find it very difficult to pass it through, especially if I doubled it up. There you go. Take it very difficult to pass it through. But if I come through perpendicular, there you go. It passes through extremely easily. And the essence of the point of the needle and why we've got a point and what you need to understand about the point is unless it's aligned 90 degrees, it's not going to go through easily. But using the point is actually saying, I'm going to put my stitch in exactly there. That is the point. And the point not only makes the passage of the needle go through, as long as it's properly aligned, but enables you to think precision. I want it there, this distance from the edge. The thing is, you see, with all stitching, it's very simple. Put your hands together for a moment. Fingers separated. Principle of stitching, when stitching things together, is thumb to thumb, finger to finger, middle finger to middle finger, ring finger, and baby finger. Now, if you're not aligned, it dislocates. And if you're not equal from the edge, as you see with the creases of your fingers, it slips. And the problem with most stitching is dislocation and slip is there. So to understand that as part of the geometry of stitching is very important. And the point is that precision, that distance from the edge. Well, I'm going to stick it there in the prosthesis. And in the systematic review I did of those sets, I found one paper that had a suture pad, and I don't like suture pads, but it did make me smile because the author had drawn little targets on the suture pad, and the needle had to point on the suture pad. Now, let us just dispel a couple of myths about picking up the needle. I'll bring you over the top to look at this. So all needles are actually made on a circle. The point, this end, not to touch, because that's where all the tapering and cutting that is required. And we've covered and will cover in the anatomy of the needle the different types of points for different types of tissue and have advantages and disadvantages. I've got here half a circle. The swage is where the thread goes in. That used to be an eye and was only the invention of Mercer, who was bought by Johnson & Johnson and ended up as Ethicon, that the swage was there. That still, to date, has been the thickest part of the needle. But Ethicon have just come up a way with making it as thin as the needle itself. So the needle needs to rotate around a point of axis. So if I use my simulated needle here, okay, on the point of axis, and you pick up 1/3, 2/3, watch the point, okay? If you're watching the point, and I'm going to rotate this round, and that's where I've picked the needle up, all right? 2/3, 1/3. I cannot get that pointing there because the pronation and supination, pronation, supination is only 90 degrees. Okay? Pronation, supination is only 90 degrees. So if I pick the needle up 2/3, 1/3, there's no way I can get that point pointing to the surface because my pronation, supination will not allow that to happen because that's way beyond 90 degrees. So for a half circle needle, yes, you pick it up at halfway. And as long as your pronation, supination is clean, as we described last week, then I can rotate this round and there it is 90 degrees to the tissue. Imagine though, if this was a 5/8 needle, then I had a 5/8 needle is out there. Now, if it held it at 90 degrees, halfway, at the same position, again, I'd have a problem. The needle wouldn't be 90 degrees to the surface. So where you pick it up depends on whether it's a half needle, 5/8, 3/8, or a quarter. The 3/8 needle down here, really, it's quite easy to pronate and supinate and get that 90 degrees. So that's why for practice and for you to understand this, this is, we recommend you use a half circle needle because that will get you to focus on the pronation, supination. Remember, as I said before last week, that using a needle holder is a bit like a screwdriver. Pronation, supination. All right, just to demonstrate 90 degrees, pronation, supination. Very few people have got a complete supination, pronation. And that is why you arm the instrument between the index finger and the middle finger and the common flexor origin. Now I can cleanly rotate the needle. So that is one. The pickup is not an absolute 1/3, 2/3. The pickup is determined by the size of the needle. For a half needle, it's almost certainly on the halfway, if not less, dependent on your ability to pronate back such that the point is pointing directly into the tissue before you start. So that's giving precision, and as I've demonstrated with the cloth and the skewer, 90 degrees enables you to enter the tissue cleanly. So the point is, excuse the pun, the point is the working shaft of the needle is there. You can't touch this area because that's the swage. You can't touch this area because that's the point. So your working is across this part of the needle. And fortunately, this part of the needle is in fact cuboidal, slightly rounded. Okay, it's slightly rounded like that. And that's important because if it was purely round, you would not be able to apply the jaws of your forceps or needle driver to it. And you can appreciate that yourself by putting a needle into a needle driver. And I'm just going to note, last week we showed you how to lock and unlock by lifting up the thumb, but now I don't want you to lock the needle at all. And simply put a needle on the end of a needle holder and hold it in the driver without the ratchet. And if you turn the needle over, you can feel it slip in to position. That's unstable, and that flips into position. Because if we zoom down on this, you will see that the shaft of the needle is actually flat at that point. And that enables you to apply the needle holder to the shaft, and it sits and cannot be rotated. Even if I got it off the ratchet, I cannot rotate the needle. Whereas if it's on that point, I can rotate it, sits flat, and now I cannot rotate it. So that gives the stability of the needle on the needle driver without locking it. So all I'm doing is I'm holding the needle I'm holding the needle, literally using that action. It's not on a ratchet. That's ratchet, that's out of ratchet. And I can still hold the needle tight on the ratchet. Now, note that I've just put it at an angle. See that angle there? I'm going to use this. Okay. Do you see that angle there? It's angled out. That means at that angle like that, my needle holder is now perpendicular. My needle is perpendicular to the tissue. That angle, and that angle, just to take you back up and demonstrate this important point, is a reflection on the displacement of the wrist from the elbow. So if I stand here, and I've explained last week, that is in a neutral position with your shoulders down, your elbows by your side, and your palms are palmar flexed. And I believe that actually isolates the intrinsic muscles of the hand. Now look at this. See that? That triangle, that angle there, between my forearm and the horizontal there, is exactly that angle there. That's no magic. That's mathematics. That's the mathematics of parallel lines. And that is vitally important in the pickup on the alignment of your needle. The other thing is, if you note that this needle is literally at the tip, I do not have any space between the tip of the needle holder and the shaft. When you think about the physics of this, that is then being maximally held at the tip. But being at the tip gives me another advantage. A bit like the ballet dancer, being on point can now pirouette. Being on the tip enables me to pirouette as well. That angle and the pickup. Now, what does this mean actually in practice? Well, let's just try and demonstrate that to you. I've got two needles. Get my models out. Take you over to the top, back to the board. I've got two models here. And take the zoom down so you can see the effect of poor alignment. So, not infrequently, I've got two needle holders, much the same. Okay. This needle holder here is a needle that's been passed to you by the scrub nurse. It's not at the tip and it's not angled out. Okay. Now watch this. As soon as I take it down to the surface, you'll zoom in, get a better picture of that. I'll do that again. Okay. The tip of the needle holder and the belly of the needle are actually creasing this Play-Doh. The other thing is, note that I've deliberately mounted it 2/3, 1/3 back. So I'm going to rotate it round and I'm going to try and push it into the tissue. That's as far as I can pronate. And now look, the needle is not 90 degrees to the tissue. I'm actually creasing it. And what people often do in this position, they don't think about pointing the needle back. They put it down and they push it forward. Put it down, push it forward. Put it down, push it forward. It is horrendous to see. That is not understanding how needles should actually work or rotate. So even using the very edge of this, let's see if we can rotate our needle through it. and it pulls out. Okay, so I'm going to put it back in that nasty position again and see if I can take it out of this. See, as I'm doing that, because my not at the tip, the needle holder itself is damaging this Play-Doh. So, same needle holder, correctly mounted tissue. Now I want to see how my alignment works. My needle holder is not actually touching the tissue. All right, but the belly is. But I'm deliberately pressing down to make marks, to show you one thing about the proper alignment. There to there to there to there. That's equal, that's too long, that's about the same. But this placing down, it enables me to actually think about the space for each stitch. I can place all the way along a nice envisage from the last stitch to that stitch, same, that stitch to that stitch, envisage, am I placing my suture correctly at every point? Note that the tip of the needle holder is and has not touched this Play-Doh at all. And now I'm going to rotate it back. I should be able to pinprick without actually damaging. You can't hardly see those pinpricks there. But what did that mean on the banana? There you go. That's pointing because I pronated and pointed 90 degrees into the tissue. I picked it up incorrectly, pronated, and you can see the skidding into the tissue. That versus that. If you want accurate stitching, you have to enter the pool correctly. But like the Chinese divers, enter the pool at 90 degrees with no splash. 90 degrees to the banana, not 90 degrees to the banana, as demonstrated here. Pick it up correctly, pronate, and you can pinprick. Just to reinforce, pick it up badly, not at the tips, okay? See, the needle holder is actually not touching. And I'll rotate back, and I'm getting skids. I am not actually delivering that needle into that tissue. There's no way I can deliver that needle. You can see yourself. Yeah, there you go. There you go. I'll just take it up a moment and turn it this way so you can see yourself the 90 degrees. Okay, let me add focus. There you go. You're rotating it back. There's no way I can pronate that back to 90 degrees. You can see that's coming in at an angle every time. That is not accurate stitching. Whereas this side, okay, this side, I'm coming back. That is now accurate stitching. Pinpricking, okay? And that is the point. The point is that you can control the rotation and control what you're doing. So the thing is angled out. The needle can give you the opportunity to pirouette and change forehand, backhand. all right, without touching. Forehand and back. I'm holding the needle holder very lightly. It's an exercise that I'd like you to practice at home with a needle. Use a bit of Play-Doh to do the same. I wouldn't recommend you do this exercise just yet, is try it on the back of your hand. And what I'm feeling is that cuboidal shape slipping gently into my fourth needle holder. The other thing about it is when you pick up the needle, you don't grab it, you gently hold it, and gently holding it, I can change the angle. I can change the handle, the angle of this. I showed Mahesh this with the cardiac registrar, and I didn't want him to practice on his hand, but he did, and he came back with a scar on his hand from all the needle points. But if you've got a needle gently held, and I'll go back to this because I certainly don't want you to start doing it on your hand and accuse me of grievous bodily harm, but you can actually change the angle and practice changing your angle. In direction of the needle. And that angle really is determined by the displacement of the wrist from the elbow. You can imagine if I have my elbow in the air as if I'm screwing something down on a flat surface, then the needle angle is going to be more 90 degrees. To effect a screwdriver stitch in the air, all right? That's still coming through the tissues at 90 degrees there. All right? Whereas if I'm actually holding it further back with my arm in the air, you'll find it's very difficult. It gets increasingly difficult to get that needle at 90 degrees to the tissue. Whereas if I'm holding it closer to the point, there you go. That's easy. I can pinprick that in to the tissue. So these exercises, a simple bit of Play-Doh, or in fact, use your banana. Okay? Can you turn your needle over on the surface of your banana, trying not to make mush the banana. Like that. Whoops, that was out of focus. You should have shouted for me. Let me get that. I've got banana on my needle holder. Just wanted to show you that I can actually practicing on the banana. It's easier to start off with perhaps on the skin itself. Okay. and that's with the large needle. People have asked about a fine needle, and the same applies with a Castros. Now, the Castellavos are there to be used as you'd hold a pencil. But I'm holding a pencil here. It's just gone through that. Let me rescue my needle through surface here. Put that safely away. So Castellavos needs to operate a bit like a pen. And the rotation is literally with the fingers. And note that I've got my distal interphalangeal joints extended, and I'm feeling this and ruling it, literally rotating it between my fingers. And there's very little movement required on the very small needles, but the mounting is exactly the same. And the skills that you use and practice with this, again, the same. So the mounting, the pickup, and the angles apply to big needles and small needles as well. This has got a ratchet on, okay? And the ratchet is there, but before using it, I've unlocked it. I've unlocked it. All right, I've unlocked it. I've still got control of the needle, but I am able to turn this over, get it flat. I'm able to flip it forehand and backhand. Now, the model you're going to use for your Castanevas is going to be the poached egg. Poached egg is a wet, sticky surface. And I want you to be able to use the wet, sticky surface and likewise practice moving your pirouetting the needle over the top and picking it up. Now, a bit like the ballerinas, this is not a skill that you suddenly start practicing without, on small needles, without practicing it on big needles first. But what I'm trying to demonstrate here is this pirouetting is keeping my focus of attention in this area. Because when I'm standing with loops, this will be the maximal area that I'm looking at. And I do not wish my needle to leave that area as I'm manipulating it and moving it. Now, I'm stressing this pickup and rotation and pirouetting for the simple reason that I do not believe you can actually mount, there you go, it tears, you can mount your needle correctly using forceps because you will not get it flush at the tip. Simple skills that require an understanding of the anatomy of the needle, but also, when mastered, will mean that you can use your needle without the forceps and move forehand and backhand very, very easily. Now, I noted I'm going to make a little incision over the yoke of this and hopefully demonstrate one other element. I'd usually use a 15 blade. So what I'm going to do is just show you that you can use the point and fine tissue literally to pick up the edge. Once you picked up the edge, you can rotate your needle through. you've got to deliver it without it breaking. But we'll come on to this element later on. I'm just going to come around to the other side of this. But I wanted to demonstrate, people are so worried about the point. The point itself can be a tool, and I'm lifting the edge. When you lift at the edge, picking the needle up gently and realigning it. These exercises are meant to be fiendishly difficult, such that when you're in the real environment, you have mastered the skills of your pirouette, your pickup, and your needle position. And I'm ready to go again. So this understanding of the needle is vitally important. And it's important that you learn not and understand the anatomy, but learn how to hold your castros or your needle holder literally on the trigger point. I can hold it on the point, and I can still open and close my needle. Okay? I can still hold it without the ratchet. But it's understanding that the needle holder can be used without the ratchet. The important thing is, in using your needle and using it without the ratchet, is too often people take the needle into the tissue, then undo the ratchet. And with that, there's an inadvertent drop of the forearm, and that itself is going to cause damage. Think about it this way. When you're throwing a ball, you don't stop halfway and then open your hand and let the ball continue. You throw and open at the same time. So the pronation of the needle, once you've angled it out, you're holding at the point. The pronation of the needle to point, and because my wrist is at the same level as my elbow to demonstrate this, I now have no angle, all right? And let me just focus on the point of the needle. Okay, there you go. So now I'm going to pronate it back. Is that 90 degrees? No, it is not. Therefore, I have to be closer to the point. Okay? Is that pointing 90 degrees? Yes, it is. Now I can stitch. Okay? But at that point, listen carefully, and you might hear, as I pronated, I did something very important. I unlocked the needle holder as I was pronating, because that unlocking of the needle holder on the pronation, and that applies also with the castros, that unlocking of the needle holder as I pronate back to point to sound, stitching right there. And now I can continue my rotation without having to unlock the needle. But see how far close to the point I'm holding that. And you look at it yourself and test it yourself on your ability to pronate. That is coming in 90 degrees to the tissue. Okay, that's pointing. That's not skipping. If I held it further back, there you go, pronated back. You can see yourself, that's not 90 degrees. And that's when people start doing that. And that's when you start getting damage. So this pickup is not a religious 2/3, 1/3. The position of the needle on the needle holder is dynamic. It all depends on the tissues, the depth, the displacement of the wrist from the elbow, the size of the needle, and then rotating. Now, there's just one other thing to point out, is that when you're stitching something solid, okay, like a calcified vessel, I'm going to just focus in on the needle again because the side on is quite helpful. Okay, if I'm coming at it and it's not 90 degrees, get the focus for you. If I've got a calcified vessel and I'm pushing in into a calcified vessel and I'm not 90 degrees, likewise, it's going to skid. But the other thing is, it could break the tissue and break the calcified block. So in fact, just before the tip, hold that again, and I want to do a calcified vessel, I hold it closer to the tip, so just outside the no-go zone of the point, and now you can see I'm 90 degrees and I can apply a force directly across it. The yellow cup here would represent my forceps. The yellow cup would represent my forceps, supporting the plaque on the other side. And I literally squeeze the needle between the needle driver and the plaque, and I can go through. If I don't do that, I run the risk of cracking the plaque and it skidding off. So I'd like to now invite my fellow senseis to offer their thoughts on needle skills and how to actually ensure that we do it correctly. Sensei Kari, thank you very much indeed.
Well, first of all, David, thank you for that session. That was an absolute masterclass. I'm probably the only person that benefited fully from it. It's really taking you back to basics. And medical students, core trainees, other surgeons starting out want to do things very quickly. So when you learn to walk, you have to realize that you have to learn to crawl first before you stand up and take your first steps. And what you're doing there is trying to get us to deconstruct everything that we do. So the principle of the pirouette and be able to manipulate the needle on the surface before you even put it into the skin is fundamental. And that takes a lot of time and practice. And most people bypass that and just say, I want to get on and stitch. So you have to get them to slow down, break it into smaller steps and practice it until it becomes natural. Watching you with the Castros on the surface of the poached egg, I found challenging, as you did. It's a very delicate operation, and you ended up tearing the tissue where you
And I
tried to get the end
confess,
of it.
I haven't done the
No,
model for
absolutely.
months.
But what you're demonstrating is how difficult it is.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the average surgeon quite understands the complexity of what you're trying to get over. So congratulations. I really enjoyed that whole session. It was, as I said, a masterclass.
Well, it's interesting. I reflect on my teaching and learning with the sword. And as I said before, I got second down with a sword in the UK just because I remembered the basic movements for 12 carters and I could make my wooden bamboo sword whoosh. And the sensei said, well, you're one of the only people I know who can actually make a whoosh with a wooden sword. So when I came to the Japan Club here to continue my studies in martial arts, and it is a study and not a sport because it's an art that needs practicing. And he said, show me your nikitsuke, which is a horizontal cut. And I thought, there you go, I'll put a whoosh in this because my previous sensei liked the whoosh. So I put a whoosh in, I went, and he went. And the interesting thing is, although I thought I could do the sword, my son started with me at the same time at the Japan Club, never having done it before. Yes, he does yoga. He is more flexible. But his katas are absolutely meticulous because he's been taught properly the nuances and the basics. And again, 90 degrees of when you go down to the floor, your front leg should be 90 degrees to the floor. And when you rise, your body should come straight up as well. So the mechanics of that mean actually to rise, your back leg has to push you up and your front leg ends up as a lever. But that's a simple posture issue. But to get the sword to work well is not just going like that. What you've got is 1 kilogram, and my sword's 1.1 kilo, is that you don't have to put force in. Is by using the momentum and direction of the sword. That's enough and effective. So you don't need to put force in. I don't have to go chop, chop, chop. In fact, you do it properly from the position and effectively cast the sword out and bring it back to your center line. But the sensei was even listening to the sword cut. And if you put too much force in, you can hear the whoosh there or the whoosh at the bottom. And he knows you're putting too much force in because the sword bounces at the bottom. Well, it needs to go down and stop without any further. But the sound should not be a deep whoosh. It's a twitter that's heard out here before the bottom. And that indicates that the blade is going through the air at the right angle, cutting through the air and using the momentum. And what's interesting is that I've had to unlearn putting the force in and understand the mechanics and how the sword actually works. In the same way, I think when you're stitching, appreciating the nuances and the mechanics of the needle and how it works will enable you to effect a better rotation with the needle. And the point is, I think, your opportunity to say, I'm not going to sort of place my needle there approximately. I'm putting it there definitively. And you're training yourself to visualize that by focusing on the point, there, there, there. And it's interesting on the questions, you need to do this for every single stitch you do. So it's all very well demonstrating one stitch, but imagine you doing this with a continuous stitch. And what I find with a continuous stitch, get the needle here, what I find with a continuous stitch is, yes, you might angle it out like that. But as people sew on a continuous stitch, what happens is that angle is lost. And by the end of a continuous stitch, an incision, you've gone from a perfect angle to something like that, where it's not at the tip and you have lost the angle. And it's in that position you suddenly find yourself elbow out, contorting, and getting yourself into very difficult positions, trying to compensate for not doing it properly. As I said, even with a 7/0 needle on a casters, I can tell if the trainee is going to make a good stitch or not. And what you need to discipline yourself is every stitch you're doing this. And you do it until you can't get it wrong. It just becomes part of what you do. And as I appreciate the teaching in Iaido, you take that basics, you've got that, but there's another layer, and you delve deeper and deeper and deeper. So the movement doesn't become 1, 2, 3. It is up, turn around, down in one movement. You learn it in 3 parts and then down. But actually, the movement is supposed to be up, turn around, down on the same cut. And that's the next stage of learning and putting your deconstruction together, that you've then got the flow and rhythm.
I was going to say it's flow, it's a continuous movement.
It's
So
a continuous movement.
you break it down into its component parts. So I'm currently learning Tai Chi, and you start off every point and eventually it flows. But as you go through that learning process, it is quite robotic. There is no flow in it, but you require that to integrate mind, body, and spirit into what you're doing.
And you probably find, Chris, as you're learning your Tai Chi, that the basic movements you think, oh, this is boring, and I'm going to come on to something more. This is boring. I can't keep on doing this. This is getting silly. Yeah. You don't appreciate that until you're further down the line and actually suddenly realize that a simple block is not it's actually a strike. Yeah. And that the punch, you're not punching with your arm, you're actually moving the forward, as Bruce Lee did, it's movement from the core. So you're putting your full weight behind it. You're not punching. And what's lovely about martial arts is that the senseis, particularly in the Japan club, Vincent and Schilling, are fantastic at deconstructing and explaining why you do this each time. Not only the action, but the theoretical movement of this person's walking next to your side is threatening you. This is what you got to do to get that movement. So there's a story that goes with it as well. And I think in our surgical training that we haven't deconstructed. We haven't thought about the posture. We haven't thought about the anatomy of the needle or any of these things. 2, that we haven't got a longitudinal process of drilling these exercises. We know that everybody is sitting down, which is utterly stupid. We haven't given people goals to reach at each of these stages, and we don't explain why we need to do it either. And the models we use don't mention synaptic paths, don't give you the haptic feedback or visual feedback.
But I think this is where we need to get people right at the beginning.
Yes.
Because as you said yourself, you have to go to the school of unlearning before you can
Yes.
move on and learn.
Yes.
And so I think getting medical students early on in their careers and encouraging them to do it properly, it must be the way to go.
I'm delighted that 5 year 1 medical students in the faculty are going to join me on the 29th. And they are going to get a set of instruments, and they're going to get vision. And it's up to them. Practice, practice, not it's up to you. But if you don't practice and don't have somebody pointing out these basics, there's absolutely no way that you can start pirouetting.
Yeah. Now, Celia has managed to join us, so I think we should invite her to
Yes, yes, please.
Step forward.
She's
step onto the mat.
Step onto
Take
the
your
mat.
bow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Hello,
hi, bro.
Lovely to join.
A little bit, a bit noisy here. I'm in a KLIA. Just sit for a while for a short drinks.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
KLIA non-prof, yes.
Yeah, you've flown in from Brunei because Silent Mental
Yes,
program
prof,
starts tomorrow.
I missed the earlier part, but when I checked this, when I checked that, what do you call it, your pre-test, there are a lot of interesting things as well. You ask questions about that. The first one is the how to place it, how you handle it, the needle, this one. And because we were trained to be like a 2/3 and one third to hold it, this is what, like 2/3 at the front and 1/3 at behind, and then not to hold the tips. Yeah. And
we did discuss that earlier. I
sure,
demonstrated that depends
sure,
on your
Prof.
ability to pronate, supinate.
Sure,
And
Prof.
where you pick it up is
Yeah,
really dependent on the ability to pronate to point.
yeah, exactly.
Point. And that
Yeah,
pronating
sure.
to point is precision.
Yeah. Another issue is that when you pick it up in a wrong place, for example, even like a needle tips, it might break.
Indeed.
Needle tips, yeah. So it's like not the whole needle is missing. Even with that, needle tips can be broken and can missing as well. That is very important. One a case that reminding to every one of us, we had it. Is it okay for that? Yeah, we had it one referral, lady who come in with the after delivery in 1.5 months, she got very severe perineal pain. Yes, yeah, because at the middle of the night she had it very bad tear. It was a suture by junior medical officer, or a house officer. And what happened that the whole needle is left inside in perineum. Yeah, that is yeah, right. So what happened that probably that's why we need to train the next generation. Even if you lose count or missing something else, inform immediately. Sometime like 2-3 o'clock in the middle of the night, and then so many deliveries happen in a general hospital, government hospital, and sometimes they lose count. They've been just suturing one after another, opening one suture another, and then they did not really count that how many had used, and the one piece has left inside, no one knows. So after a 1.5 month only, this was discovered. When we x-ray this, there was the curved needle was there.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Well,
So that's
a very, very important point, because that was the last point I wanted to make about this.
Yes, Prof.
Is that as a surgeon,
Yeah.
you as an individual are responsible
Yes, Prof.
for the
Yeah.
needle. Now,
Yes, Prof.
there is a board that counts the needles. The scrub nurse places the needle either on a sponge or a bespoke magnetic tree, or
Yeah.
on an adhesive
Yeah.
card. They are counted from the board, counted in, counted out.
Sure.
As a surgeon, when you take a needle, make sure that you put it back on the needle holder and pass it back on the needle holder
On the needle holder.
to the scrub nurse. Done that.
Sure.
If at the end of the operation they say a needle is missing, it's your problem, and you do your utmost to help the staff to find it. Now, I know a registrar, a senior registrar, who then became a senior consultant in a very eminent position, who left the needle on for a pacing wire on a heart.
No.
And had done and clasped. And I asked him, and the anaesthetist asked him, what about that needle? I'll be all right. He went out, he spoke to the consultant, and sheepishly came back and removed the needle. As you've pointed out, if you lose a needle, inform somebody. Now, the difficulty is what size needle, because certainly in cardiac surgery, one goes down to 5/0s and 6/0s. 6/0s and 7/0s, very unlikely to find.
Yeah.
And are not going to be visible on an X-ray.
Sure.
But you still have to go for a 5/0. I think you need to go through the process and do an X-ray as well to check. What's your experience since of lost needles?
Like I think the best practice when they open up the one, the suture from the pack, there is always have a, that's where the needle place it. So keep this one, and then this needle, the loose needle, place it back. So it's like needle and this strip together, so that you can count the strip and then you can count the needle as well.
count a needle in the clip.
Sure.
That's nice.
Yeah.
But it does require, it's a good habit, it's an absolute necessary habit, and it's something that you should take responsibility of from the beginning. Absolutely. And that's what a story. Gosh, 1 month with a needle in the perineum. Just imagine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Prof. Yes.
Thank you, Celia. I look forward to seeing you at the Silent Mentor tomorrow.
Yeah. Tomorrow evening, Prof. Yeah.
Yeah, tomorrow evening I'll be there.
Evening, yes,
And
Prof.
Sensei Caddy, any observations or any from you or any questions from the audience?
Now, once again, what you're demonstrating there is systems failure and the need to create good systems for us to work within.
Indeed.
That you're not a standalone, you're part of a system,
Yeah.
and you have to establish that system if it does not exist in your hospital or your part of the world.
Indeed. Indeed.
You don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's
No.
already been invented.
Indeed. Indeed. Thank you, Sensei. Pleasure. And thank Ayushi for recording and production. We wish you all well and we'll continue the story of the needle and the place part of this, as I've demonstrated this evening. If you align the needle, it enables you to place, and the place is part of the spacing, or in Japanese term, the mai, the distance between the camera and there is understanding that distance. We wish you well, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor David. It was very informative session. So thank you. Yes.